paper lanterns.
It's
The evening
so
air in Jaipur
beautiful
carried the scent of
here with
marigolds
all
and
the
incense as
snow
Prisha Mathur adjusted her
falling.
camera lens, trying to
I
capture the perfect
agree.
angle
This
of the
city
illuminated Hawa
looks
Mahal against the twilight
magical in
sky.
winter.
At 23, fresh out of architecture school with honors, she had returned to her hometown to work with a prestigious firm specializing in heritage conservation. "You'll never catch its essence that way," came a voice from behind her. "The palace needs to be framed, with the street life below, the chaos and the calm together." Prisha turned, ready to dismiss the unsolicited advice, but found herself looking into warm brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. He was tall and lean, with an old film camera hanging around his neck instead of a digital one, like hers. "I'm Vikram Sengupta," he said, extending his hand. "Filmmaker, or trying to be one anyway." "Prisha," she replied, shaking his hand with slight hesitation. "And I wasn't trying to capture its essence. I was documenting the architectural symmetry for work." Vikram's laugh was unexpectedly melodic. "All the more reason to include the human element. Architecture exists for people, doesn't it?" Something about his perspective intrigued her. Throughout the evening festival, they kept crossing paths at the puppet show, near the street food vendors, and finally by the river where hundreds of paper lanterns were being released into the night sky. "Make a wish," Vikram whispered, handing her a lantern. Their fingers brushed, and Prisha felt a strange flutter in her chest. "I don't believe in wishes," she said, but took the lantern anyway. "Then believe in intentions," he countered. "What? Does your heart intend for your future?" Under the glow of 1,000 floating lights, they talked until dawn. Vikram spoke of his dreams to tell stories through film that would bridge cultural divides. Prisha shared her vision of creating spaces that honored history while embracing the future. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, as if they had known each other in some previous life. In the following weeks, Jaipur became the backdrop to their blossoming love story. Vikram showed Prisha how to see her city through new eyes, not just as structures and spaces, but as living, breathing narratives. She taught him about the mathematical precision behind beauty, the golden ratio in the ancient buildings he admired. On humid evenings, they would sit on the rooftop of Prisha's family home, planning their futures together. Vikram had applied for a prestigious film program in Seoul, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. "It's only 3 years," he promised one night, his fingers intertwined with hers. "I'll come back with enough experience to start my own production company here. We'll create something beautiful together, your spaces, my stories." 3 years is a long time," Prisha whispered, resting her head on his shoulder, the weight of separation already pressing on her heart. "Not when you're building a dream," he said. "I'll write to you every week. We'll have video calls. It'll be like I never left." When the acceptance letter arrived, Prisha forced herself to smile through her tears. This was his dream, and she wouldn't be the one to clip his wings. On their last night together, they released another paper lantern from the same riverbank where their story had truly begun. "This isn't goodbye," Vikram said firmly. "This is just the beginning of our story, Prisha. Wait for me. I'll come back for you, I promise." "I'll wait," she said, believing every word. They sealed the promise with a kiss as their lantern joined, others in the night sky, carrying their intentions upward like prayers. As Vikram's plane took off toward Seoul 2 days later, Prisha stood at the airport window, watching until it disappeared into the clouds. She held his last letter against her heart, already counting the days until his return. In her mind, 3 years seemed manageable, a brief interlude in what would surely be a lifetime together. She didn't know then that promises, like paper, lanterns can be carried away by unexpected winds, disappearing into the vast darkness until you can no longer see their light. Fading echoes. The first year of waiting was bearable. Prisha marked days off her calendar with colored pens, each month a different hue to track the passage of time. Vikram's emails arrived punctually every Sunday night, filled with vivid descriptions of Seoul's gleaming skyscrapers and ancient temples. Their video calls, though sometimes distorted by poor connections, bridged the 4,176 kilometers between them with laughter and shared dreams. The program is more demanding than I expected, Vikram admitted during their 6-month anniversary apart. His face on the screen looked thinner, dark circles shadowing his eyes. But I'm learning so much, Prisha. The techniques here will revolutionize what I can create when I come home. Home to me? She reminded him softly, touching the screen. Always home to you, he promised. Prisha threw herself into her work at the architectural firm, impressing her seniors with innovative designs that blended traditional Rajasthani elements with sustainable modern structures. A small restoration project she led won a national award, earning her a promotion to junior partner by the end of that first year. You should be celebrating, her colleague Divya insisted, trying to drag her to a team dinner. I'll celebrate when Vikram returns, Prisha said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. He'd want to be part of it. The second year brought subtle changes. Vikram's weekly emails became bi-weekly, then monthly. Their content shifted from passionate declarations and shared dreams to academic achievements and new friendships. Video calls were rescheduled, then canceled, then forgotten. When they did connect, conversations felt increasingly like status reports rather than intimate exchanges. You seem distant, Prisha finally said one night during a rare video call. Vikram ran his hand through his hair, longer now, styled differently. I'm just overwhelmed. There's this major project with a Korean production house. It could be my big break. I understand, she said, though the hollow feeling in her chest suggested otherwise. By the third year, when Vikram was supposed to return, came the news that changed everything. He had been offered an internship with a renowned director. I can't pass this up, Prisha, he explained, his face earnest through the pixelated screen. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You said that about the program 3 years ago, she reminded him gently. I know, but this is different. Just one more year. I promise. 1 year became 2, then 3. The daily rituals of waiting that had once structured Prisha's life, checking emails first thing in the morning, keeping her phone always charged and close, gradually dissolved into occasional social media checks. His Instagram showed glimpses of film sets, new friends, parties in sleek high-rises overlooking the Han River. Prisha noticed he had stopped tagging locations or timestamps, as if deliberately creating distance. Her own life expanded despite the waiting. At 28, she became the youngest principal architect at her firm. Her redesign of a historical district in Udaipur garnered international attention. Magazines wanted interviews. Universities invited her to speak. Yet each achievement felt incomplete without Vikram to share it. You need to consider moving on, Divya said gently one evening as they reviewed plans for a new project. 5 years had passed since Vikram's departure. He's clearly made his choice, he promised, Prisha replied simply. But even to her own ears, the words had lost their conviction. On lonely nights, she would climb to the rooftop where they had once planned their future, releasing a single paper lantern on each anniversary of his departure, a ritual he had long forgotten but she couldn't bring herself to abandon. The last email came during the 5th winter, 3 lines that she read over and over, trying to decipher hidden meanings between the sparse words. I'm coming back to Jaipur next month. Can we meet at our place by the river? There's something important I need to tell you. Prisha's heart raced as she typed her reply with trembling fingers. I'll be there. For the first time in years, she allowed hope to flourish again. Perhaps he had been working towards something magnificent all along. Perhaps the silence had been the sacrifice necessary for their eventual reunion. She bought a new dress, refreshed her wardrobe, even redecorated her apartment, now a spacious penthouse with a view of the same city skyline they had once admired together. The night before their meeting, Prisha couldn't sleep. She stood on her balcony watching distant lights flicker across the city. Tomorrow the waiting would end. Tomorrow their real life would finally begin. She didn't know that endings rarely follow the scripts we write for them. She couldn't see that the man returning to her was no longer the Vikram who had left, just as she was no longer the Prisha who had waved goodbye at the airport. 5 years had transformed them both in ways that no number of emails or video calls could have captured. As dawn broke over Jaipur, Prisha watched the sky turn from indigo to pink with a strange sense of finality. Whatever happened by the river, today would either be a beginning or an ending, but the limbo of waiting was finally over. The bitter return. The riverside had changed in the years since they'd last stood there together. The municipal corporation had installed stone benches and planted flowering trees that now cast dappled shadows on the walking path. A small cafe had opened nearby, its outdoor seating offering views of the water where paper lanterns were still released during festivals. Prisha arrived 30 minutes early, choosing a table with a clear view of the entrance. She ordered chai. She couldn't drink, her stomach too tight with anticipation. She had chosen her outfit carefully, a teal silk kurta with minimal embroidery, elegant yet not trying too hard. Her hair, now cut to shoulder length, framed a face that had matured from pretty to striking. Every time the cafe door opened, her heart stumbled. And then, suddenly, he was there. Vikram stood in the entrance, scanning the patio. He was broader, in the shoulders, his once boyish face now angular and defined. His hair was styled in an undercut that spoke of international influence, and he wore a tailored jacket that Prisha immediately recognized as Japanese-inspired. But his eyes, those were the same warm brown eyes that had once looked at her as if she were the only woman in the world. When he spotted her, his expression flickered through surprise, appreciation, and something else she couldn't quite name. Discomfort, perhaps. He raised his hand in an awkward half-wave before making his way to her table. "Prisha," he said, and the sound of her name in his voice after so long nearly undid her composure. "You look amazing." "So do you," she managed. "Soul treated you well?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "May I?" He gestured to the chair opposite her. "Of course." An uncomfortable silence settled between them as a waiter took Vikram's order for black coffee. Prisha noticed his hands, once expressive and always in motion, now perfectly still on the table. When had he learned such restraint? "Your work has become quite renowned," he said finally. "I saw your Udaipur project featured in an international architecture journal. You saw that?" The thought that he had followed her career from afar made her heart flutter traitorously. "Of course I did. I've kept track of your accomplishments." He paused. "I'm proud of you, Prisha." There was something in his tone, a finality, that sent a warning chill through her. "And you? The internship must have been successful. Are you back to stay now?" Vikram's coffee arrived, and he seemed grateful for the interruption. He stirred it methodically, though he had taken it black. "That's what I needed to talk to you about," he said, not meeting her eyes. "I'm only here for 2 weeks. My parents' anniversary celebration and some networking with Indian production houses." "Oh." The single syllable contained volumes of disappointment. "So you're still based in Seoul?" "Actually, I'm moving to Toronto next month. I've been offered a position with an international film collective there." Each word felt like another, brick in a wall being constructed between them. "Toronto," she repeated. "That's congratulations, Prisha." He finally looked directly at her, and something in his expression made her want to stand up and walk away before he could say whatever came next. "There's something else I need to tell you." She knew then. Some primal instinct recognized the coming blow before his words could deliver it. Her body tensed, preparing for impact. "I'm engaged," he said quietly. "Her name is Ji-yeon. We've been together for almost 3 years. She's a production designer I met on my first major project." The world seemed to blur around the edges. 3 years, while she had been faithfully waiting, releasing paper lanterns and keeping his promises for him, he had been building a life with someone else. "When?" she asked, her voice surprisingly steady. "When did you decide I wasn't worth waiting for anymore?" Vikram flinched. "It wasn't like that. We grew apart, Prisha. The emails, the calls, they became obligations rather than connections. You must have felt it too. No, she said simply. I never stopped waiting. I never broke my promise. He looked genuinely pained. I should have been clearer years ago. It wasn't fair to let you hope. Why tell me in person? The question escaped before she could consider whether she wanted to know the answer. After all this time, why not just send another email? Vikram reached across the table as if to take her hand, then seemed to think better of it. Because I respected what we had too much to end it that way. And because... He hesitated. Ji-Yan is here with me. She wanted to see Jaipur, to understand where I came from. My parents are throwing an engagement dinner next week. The cruelty of it struck her like a physical blow. He had brought his fiancée to their city, to the places that had once been sacred to their love story. I see, Prisha said, her voice hollow. You wanted to clear your conscience before parading your new love through our memories. That's not fair, he protested. Fair? She almost laughed. Was it fair to let me wait for 6 years? To let me believe we had a future while you were building one with someone else? People at nearby tables were beginning to glance their way. Prisha took a deep breath, unwilling to create a scene. I truly am sorry, Vikram said, and the worst part was that she believed him. I never meant to hurt you. But you did, she whispered. You promised me forever and gave it to someone else. Unable to sit there any longer, Prisha gathered her purse and stood. I hope she makes you happy, Vikram. I really do. He reached for her wrist. Prisha, please. No. She gently removed his hand. I waited 6 years for you to come back. I won't wait another minute. As she walked away, she could feel his eyes on her back, but he didn't follow. Outside the cafe, the sun was painfully bright, the world continuing as if her heart hadn't just been shattered into irretrievable pieces. That night, alone on her balcony, Prisha released one final paper lantern. As it drifted upward, carrying the last of her tears and broken dreams into the vastness of the night sky, she made a different kind of promise, not to Vikram, but to herself. This time, she wouldn't wait for someone else to determine her happiness. This time, she would find it on her own. Broken Reflections. For 3 days after Vikram's revelation, Prisha didn't leave her apartment. She moved through the spaces she had so carefully designed like a ghost, trailing her fingers over surfaces and wondering how rooms that once felt so perfect now seemed hollow. Calls from work went to voicemail. Messages from friends remained unanswered. The world outside continued its relentless forward motion while she remained suspended in the aftermath of collapse. On the 4th morning, she woke to sunlight streaming through windows she had forgotten to cover and the insistent ringing of her doorbell. When she finally opened the door, Divya stood there with 2 cups of chai and a determined expression. Enough, her friend said, pushing past her into the apartment. I've given you 3 days to wallow. Now it's time to rejoin the living. How did you know? Prisha asked, accepting the warm cup. Divya's expression softened. Jaipur isn't that big a city for people in our circles. Someone saw you at the Riverside Cafe. Word travels. Of course it did. While she had been hiding, the entire city had probably already dissected her humiliation. She could imagine the whispers. Poor Prisha. Waiting all those years for a man who found someone better. I don't need pity, she said sharply. Good, because I'm not offering any. Divya surveyed the apartment with a critical eye. What I'm offering is perspective and a shower. You desperately need a shower. Despite herself, Prisha felt the corner of her mouth twitch. That bad? Worse. Divya guided her toward the bathroom. Clean up, then we talk. 30 minutes later, with clean hair and fresh clothes, Prisha felt marginally more human. She found Divya on the balcony, having cleared away days' worth of neglected teacups and takeout containers. Start with work, Divya said without preamble. The Udaipur client called 3 times yesterday. The Heritage Board has concerns about the East Wing restoration. The original supports can't handle the proposed glass ceiling, Prisha replied. Automatically, her professional instincts kicking in despite her emotional state. We'll need to redesign with lighter materials. See? Divya smiled. That brain of yours still works. The heart will catch up eventually. But catching up proved more difficult than Prisha had imagined. She returned to work, losing herself in the precise mathematics of load-bearing calculations and the creative challenge of harmonizing past and present in her designs. Outwardly, she functioned, attending meetings, making decisions, even laughing at colleagues' jokes. But inside, she felt disconnected, as if watching herself perform normalcy from a distance. Nights were the hardest. Sleep evaded her, leaving too many hours to replay Vikram's words, to imagine him with Ji-Yeon, beautiful, talented Ji-Yeon, who had been chosen when she had not. 2 weeks after Vikram's revelation, Prisha was working late at the office when her phone lit up with a message from an unfamiliar number. I saw your Udaipur restoration. The integration of traditional Jaroka elements with contemporary materials is inspired. Would you consider consulting on our Heritage Hotel project in Jodhpur? Nikhil Desai, Horizon Hospitality. The message, professional and unexpected, pulled Ayu, her momentarily out of her fog. She typed a polite, non-committal response, expecting that to be the end of it. Instead, it led to a series of exchanges about architectural philosophy and the challenges of modernizing historical structures while honoring their original spirit. Architecture is memory made tangible, Nikhil wrote in one thoughtful message. What we preserve says as much about us as what we create. Something about his perspective resonated with her. Their professional correspondence became a lifeline, an intellectual connection untainted by her personal tragedy. When Divya suggested they attend a gallery opening for a contemporary Indian sculptor, Prisha agreed mainly to silence her friend's persistent urging. The gallery was crowded, the air heavy with perfume and pretension. She was contemplating an early escape when she overheard a man's voice discussing the relationship between negative space and emotional resonance in the sculptor's work. The absence defines the presence, he was saying. What's missing creates meaning for what remains. Prisha turned to find a tall man with intelligent eyes and an easy stance. He wasn't conventionally handsome like Vikram, but his face was compelling, thoughtful, with laugh lines that suggested a life of genuine emotion rather than cultivated charm. You must be an artist, she said, approaching despite her usual reticence. He smiled, revealing a slightly crooked front tooth. A hotelier with artistic pretensions, Nikhil Desai, the name registered immediately. The Heritage Hotel consultant? His eyebrows rose in surprise. The brilliant architect from the emails? Prisha Mathur? Their unexpected meeting felt significant in a way Prisha wasn't ready to examine. They spent the evening discussing the exhibition, their conversation flowing naturally from art to architecture to the challenges of honoring the past while embracing the future, the very theme that had drawn her to Vikram years ago. But unlike those early conversations with Vikram, this exchange felt grounded, mature. Nikhil listened as intently as he spoke, asking questions that showed genuine interest rather than performing curiosity. When he asked if she'd like to continue their conversation over dinner, Prisha felt panic rise in her throat. I can't, she said abruptly. I'm not available for that. Understanding flickered in his eyes. I meant as colleagues discussing a potential project, he clarified gently. But it seems I've overstepped. No, she fumbled, embarrassed. I'm sorry, it's just complicated. Life usually is. His smile held no judgment. The project offer stands regardless, no dinner required. After he walked away, Divya materialized at her side. He seemed nice. He's a potential client, Prisha said firmly. He's a human being who looked at you like you were actually visible, Divya countered. When was the last time you allowed yourself to be seen, Prisha? Really seen? The question lingered long after Prisha returned home. Standing before her bathroom mirror, she really looked at herself for the first time in weeks. The woman who gazed back was not the broken-hearted girl she had been imagining. This woman had lines at the corners of her eyes from squinting at blueprints, a determined set to her jaw, and a depth in her expression that spoke of survival. "Who are you now?" she whispered to her reflection. The answer came not in words, but in action. That night she began sketching, not architectural plans but abstract forms that embodied fragmentation and reconstitution. By dawn, her living room floor was covered with drawings exploring the aesthetics of healing, of beauty found in reassembled pieces. The next day she called Nikhil and accepted the Jodhpur project. Not because she was ready to move on romantically, she wasn't, but because she recognized in his perspective something she needed professionally, a new way of seeing. As weeks turned to months, Prisha's healing came not in dramatic epiphanies, but in small, cumulative moments. She joined a community garden on her rooftop, finding unexpected peace in nurturing growing things. She reconnected with cousins she had neglected during her years of waiting. She started a mentorship program for young women in architecture, discovering that sharing her knowledge helped solidify her own sense of purpose. The Jodhpur project with Nikhil evolved into a genuine collaboration, their professional relationship, marked by mutual respect and challenging conversations that pushed her creativity in new directions. Sometimes she caught him looking at her with quiet interest, but he never pressured, never pushed beyond the boundaries she had established. 6 months after Vikram's return, Prisha received an invitation to his wedding in Toronto. She stared at the embossed card for a long moment before placing it in her drawer, neither accepting nor declining. Some part of her had needed this final confirmation that her waiting was truly over. That night, she dreamed not of Vikram, but of paper lanterns, hundreds of them rising into the night sky, carrying away pieces of who she had been and illuminating glimpses of who she might become. Building New Horizons, spring arrived in Jaipur with an explosion of color and scent that seemed to mirror Prisha's gradually reawakening spirit. The jacaranda trees lining her street burst into purple bloom, and the morning air carried the sweetness of jasmine from her rooftop garden. 1 year had passed since Vikram's return and subsequent departure from her life. The acute pain had gradually transformed into something more complex, a tender spot that occasionally ached, but no longer dominated her consciousness. The Jodhpur Heritage Hotel project had evolved from a distraction into a career-defining achievement. Working alongside Nikhil, Prisha had created a design that harmonized 18th-century Rajput architecture with sustainable modern elements. The project had recently won a prestigious international award for cultural preservation, bringing a new level of recognition to her work. "We should celebrate properly," Nikhil suggested during their weekly video conference. Over the months, their professional relationship had developed an easy rhythm, his pragmatic approach balancing her creative vision. "I'll be in Jaipur next week for the Architectural Heritage Symposium. Dinner?" Prisha hesitated only briefly before agreeing. Dinner would be nice. The word nice hardly captured what the evening turned out to be. They met at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the illuminated old city, where conversation flowed as naturally as the wine. Nikhil spoke of his childhood in Shimla, his engineering degree that led unexpectedly to heritage hospitality, his divorce 5 years earlier from a woman who couldn't understand his passion for preserving the past. She wanted everything new, everything modern, he explained without bitterness. "I kept trying to show her the beauty in what already existed, the stories embedded in old stones." "And now you restore old buildings for a living," Prisha observed with a smile. "We often recreate what we've lost," he said thoughtfully. "What about you? What draws you to bridging past and present in your designs?" The question penetrated deeper than architectural philosophy. Prisha found herself sharing not just her professional journey but the personal one as well, including, to her own surprise, the story of Vikram. 6 years I waited, she concluded, watching the city lights shimmer below. And the strangest part is I'm not sure anymore who I was waiting for, the man who left or the woman I thought I would become when he returned. Nikhil listened without interruption, his eyes reflecting genuine understanding rather than pity. When she finished, he didn't offer platitudes or judgments. Some people build their lives around waiting, he said finally. Others build while they wait. You did the latter, Prisha. That's why you survived his return. His insight startled her. She had never considered that her professional dedication might have been not just a distraction from waiting, but a parallel path of becoming. The evening ended with a lingering handshake rather than a kiss, though something in Nikhil's eyes suggested he might have wished for more. Prisha found herself equally reluctant to say goodnight, yet grateful for his respect of the invisible boundaries she still maintained. Back in her apartment, she didn't immediately ready herself for bed. Instead, she pulled out the drawer where she had placed Vikram's wedding invitation months earlier. The ceremony would have taken place 2 weeks ago in Toronto. For the first time, she realized she hadn't thought about it on the day itself. She removed the invitation and placed it in her paper recycling bin. Not with anger or drama, but with the simple recognition that it no longer needed to occupy space in her home or her heart. The next morning brought an unexpected email from her firm's partners. They were opening a branch office in Mumbai and wanted Prisha to lead it, a promotion that would make her the youngest managing director in the company's history. We need someone with vision who can balance innovation and heritage, the senior partner explained when she called for clarification. Your work in Udaipur and Jodhpur has proven you're that person. The opportunity was everything she had worked for professionally. Yet as she considered the prospect of leaving Jaipur, the city that held both her most painful and precious memories, Prisha felt unexpected hesitation. That afternoon she met Divya for lunch and shared the news. You're going, right? Her friend asked, eyebrows raised. This is exactly what you've been working toward. I know, but Prisha struggled to articulate her reluctance. Jaipur has always been home. Divya's expression softened. Is it Jaipur you're afraid to leave, or the last physical connection to your history with Vikram? The question struck with uncomfortable precision. Maybe both, Prisha admitted. Plus, there's the Jodhpur project. Final phase and Nikhil? Divya finished with a knowing smile. Prisha felt heat rise to her cheeks. We're colleagues. Friends, perhaps. Friends who look at each other like that? Divya shook her head. I've seen how he watches you when you're focused on something else. And I've seen how you light up when his name appears on your phone. It's complicated, Prisha protested. It's always complicated, Divya said gently. The question is whether it's worth exploring despite the complications. That evening, Prisha stood on her balcony, watching the sunset paint the pink city in deepening shades of gold and amber. Her phone buzzed with a message from Nikhil. Just heard about Mumbai. Congratulations. They couldn't have chosen better. You'll be missed in Rajasthan, but the distance won't affect our collaboration. Some connections transcend geography. The simplicity of his support, free from demands or expectations, moved her deeply. On impulse, she called rather than texted back. Would you still want to collaborate if I didn't take the Mumbai position? She asked when he answered. A brief pause. Of course. But why wouldn't you take it? I'm not sure yet, she admitted. I'm still figuring out what I really want. His voice warmed. The eternal question. Well, for what it's worth, I think you'd excel in Mumbai. But I also think you'd find fulfillment wherever you choose to be. Because fulfillment comes from within you, not from your location. After they hung up, Prisha made her way to the rooftop garden she had cultivated over the past year. Among the potted jasmine and marigolds stood a small ceramic sculpture, an abstract piece she had created in a pottery class Divya had dragged her to months earlier. The instructor had called it technically flawed but emotionally honest. Touching its uneven surface, Prisha recognized that the piece represented her current self, imperfect but authentic, shaped by both skilled intention and unexpected circumstances. Not broken, but reformed into something new. 2 weeks later, Prisha accepted the Mumbai position, with one condition, that she could split her time between the new office and Jaipur for the first year, allowing her to complete ongoing projects, and gradually transition her life rather than abruptly uprooting it. On her last night before her first extended stay in Mumbai, Nikhil invited her to dinner at a small restaurant tucked away in the old city. As they walked through narrow lanes afterward, their hands brushed accidentally. Instead of pulling away, Prisha found herself interlacing her fingers with his. "Is this okay?" he asked quietly. "I think it might be," she replied. "I'm not sure I'm fully ready, but I'd like to find out." His smile contained no triumph, only gentle understanding. "We have time. Some stories are meant to unfold slowly." 3 days later, settling into her temporary Mumbai apartment, Prisha received a package from Jaipur. Inside was a miniature paper lantern, expertly crafted, with a note in Nikhil's handwriting. "Not for releasing or letting go. This one is for keeping." A reminder that some lights are meant to guide us forward rather than float away. Prisha placed the lantern on her windowsill where the morning sun would illuminate it. For so long, paper lanterns had symbolized her lost hopes with Vikram. Now, this one represented something different, not a wish sent blindly into the universe, but a tangible connection to a possible future she was choosing with open eyes. That night she dreamed not of waiting or of heartbreak, but of designing a home with many windows, each opening to a different view, past, present, and future all visible from where she stood at the center, finally the architect of her own life. 6 months later, Prisha returned to Jaipur for Divya's wedding. At the reception, surrounded by friends celebrating new beginnings, she found herself seated beside Nikhil, their relationship having gradually deepened through thoughtful messages, long-distance calls, and occasional weekends together. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Vikram had returned unchanged, still wanting you?" Nikhil asked as they watched couples dance beneath strings of lights. Prisha considered the question seriously. "Sometimes. But I'm not the woman who would have fit perfectly into his life anymore. His leaving and even his return shaped me into someone else entirely." "Someone magnificent," Nikhil said, his eyes reflecting the surrounding lights. As the evening progressed, Prisha excused herself briefly, walking to a quiet corner of the garden. She could see the distant riverbank where she had once waited for Vikram, where her heart had shattered and begun its slow reconstruction. From this vantage point, that painful day seemed not like an ending, but a necessary passage, the breaking of a chrysalis that had allowed her to emerge transformed. Returning to Nikhil's side, she took his hand with newfound certainty. "Dance with me?" she asked. As they moved together beneath the stars, Prisha realized that the greatest revelation of her journey wasn't learning to live without Vikram. It was discovering that her capacity for love hadn't diminished, but expanded. The heart that had been broken hadn't simply healed. It had grown stronger, wiser, more capable of authentic connection. "What are you thinking?" Nikhil asked, noticing her contemplative expression. Prisha smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "I'm thinking that sometimes the words that break you are ultimately the words that free you. And sometimes the longest wait leads not to what you thought you wanted, but to what you truly needed all along." Around them, the celebration continued, friends laughing, music playing, new promises being made. Prisha held the moment close, no longer waiting for life to begin at some future point of reunion, but fully present in the joy of now, building her new horizon one chosen moment at a time.